Movie Mark with another Mad Movie Mark movie review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1938 gangster shoot-'em-up movie, Angels with Dirty Faces. I also plan on watching all 206 movies that have 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I will give them all a rating of 1 to 10. Once I watch all the movies and rate all of them, I will rate them from least best to best. I started in the 1920 silent movie era. I'm working my way to 2022, and right now I am on 1938 Angels with Dirty Faces. This is the 20th movie I have watched on this list, so I feel like I'm finally making some progress. Only 186 more movies to go. This movie stars James Cagney as Rocky Sullivan, Pat O'Brien as Reverend Connolly, and Humphrey Bogart as James Frazier. It has a 100% fresh rating from the critics and a 92% fresh rating from the audience, which is on the upper echelon of what we have seen thus far. It was nominated for Best Actor for James Cagney, Best Director, and Best Writing at the Oscars. When we first start this movie, we see a young Jerry Connolly and a young Rocky Sullivan as they are trying to rob a boxcar. They get caught and they are chased by the police. The police catch Rocky, but Jerry gets away. Rocky ends up spending some time in a reform school. Then we fast forward some years later and we see that Rocky is now sort of a more seasoned criminal, and he is partnering with his lawyer, who is James Frazier. They have just done an armed robbery and they stole $100,000. But Rocky Sampson was caught, and his lawyer, James Frazier, said, if you take the rap, if you take the heat, if you do the time, I will make sure the $100,000 is safe when you get back, and you will go ahead and be able to have the money. So Rocky Sullivan obviously thinks this is a great idea, so he goes and does the time. When he comes back into town, he is met by a group of thugs, a group of like teenagers who are not that much different than how he was when he was a teenager. They see him as a good mark to try to rob him of his money. When he walks by them, they are able to snatch his wallet. But since he was part of this crime syndicate when he was a kid, he knows how all this is done. He knows how all this is ran. He knows where the kid's hideout is. So he goes to the hideout, he gets their money, and he says, you know, I'm Rocky Sullivan. And once he says, I'm Rocky Sullivan, they all like know who he is immediately. This is someone that they've idolized as a person who is of a high authority when it comes to criminal activity. So they are taken aback. They are pretty much in awe. This is their idol that they've known for years. And they give him his wallet back. They pretty much cater to whatever he wants. He then runs into Reverend Connolly, who is now a reverend. And, he tries to go over old times. Reverend Connolly says like he has turned over a new leaf. And he's actually trying to get these kids to go the straight and narrow because they're also starting to get into a world of crime. So he believes that if he can have Rocky Sullivan, step in and try to get them on the straight and narrow, that would be a lot easier because they idolize Rocky Sullivan. At first, it seems like Rocky Sullivan's on board. He invites them to his house where they all have food. It's probably one of the best meals they've had in a long time. And then he tricks them into playing this basketball game in hopes to smack some sense into them and show them that they need to follow the rules. It doesn't really work out. Anyway, so that's a side story. The kids are kind of a side story in this big picture. Humphrey Bogart, when he meets up again with Rocky Sullivan, he is completely stunned that Rocky's out of jail. He didn't know that it was going to happen. And frankly, he doesn't really have the $100,000 at this time to give Rocky, nor does he want to give Rocky any money. The syndicate or the company that he's with, he is not the big boss, so he doesn't have any control over the money or how much is given out or anything like that. Rocky Sullivan eventually forces him to give him $100,000, so Frazier ends up giving him the money. But after that, Frazier starts targeting Rocky Sullivan, trying to kill him because he wants to get rid of him so he can get his money back. The rest of the movie is Frazier trying to kill Rocky Sullivan to get his money back, and Rocky Sullivan kind of leaning on the kids, using them whenever he needs them to hide the money or to do his bidding. At the end of the movie, Rocky Sullivan kind of goes crazy and kills a bunch of people. He is sentenced to the electric chair, and Father Connolly asks him, can you do me a solid here, and when you get on the electric chair, just pretend like you're scared and you don't want to die. I think that'll really scare these kids into going straight, and they won't end up like you were. They won't end up a murderer and a criminal, and they'll actually go the straight and narrow. At first he says, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to lose my pride. I'm not going to ruin the end of the movie with what he actually decides to do. But, the kids, in the end, the kids are meant to feel a certain way. And I think that the point of the movie comes off. And I think the kids feel the certain way that that they're supposed to feel. So I think this movie is pretty good. It's about par for what I've seen thus far, the last couple movies. The acting is really good. I had never seen Pat O'Brien in a movie before, and I thought he did exceptional as the reformed criminal to now like pastor type of character. He really does a great job with trying to convince Rocky Sullivan that he needs to help these kids go the straight and narrow. I think he does a really good job with trying to teach the kids and trying to really make sure the kids don't get involved in crime. Rocky Sullivan, James Cagney, of course he does a great job here. I actually liked him better in this movie than I did The Public Enemy. His character is still not that redeemable, and his character is still a crook and a gangster of sorts, but I think that it's more fleshed out in this movie. I think that he does show instances of having a conscience and having a heart at times, even though in the movie he says he doesn't have a heart. And I think he really brings it home. And I think this really shows his progression of an actor from when he was in Public Enemy to when he is in this movie now. The one real sticking point for me in this movie, and it's a sticking point for me in a lot of movies, is the acting of the kids. Now, these kids are older. They're probably in their mid-teens. Some of them are a little bit younger than that. But the acting for me just isn't there with these kids. And it's either hit or miss a lot of times with child actors, and I think that this one is a miss. They just come off as, they're supposed to come off as dangerous and really willing to risk their lives for whatever and not having a care in the world, but they actually just come off as kind of annoying and sometimes a little whiny, and I just couldn't get into it. Whenever they were on the screen, it really took me out of the movie. I wasn't really as deep into it as when it was just Reverend Connolly and Rocky Sullivan. When it was just James Cagney and Pat O'Brien, I was in it. I was right there with them. I was moving along with the movie as best as you could. But then when the kids came in, it just kind of ruined everything. I was actually surprised in this movie that I thought Humphrey Bogart was really solid. I really need to go back and watch Humphrey Bogart movies because I remember when I was younger, I wasn't a fan of his, but he actually is pretty good in this movie, though he has a limited role. I think this is probably the earliest movie that I've ever seen him in, though he might have been on Mutiny on the Bounty, which might have come out before this, but he does a really good job in this movie. I really think for his limited role, he comes off as a strong actor, and I could see why he got bigger, better roles later on in his life, because he really can be that leading man. The screenplay is really good. The script is written really well. Everything about this for me, the writing, the acting, besides the kids, is better than Public Enemy, which was the other movie that I watched with James Cagney. This is a nice gangster movie. I give it an 8 out of 10. Thank you. I hope you have a great day.